And welcome at the Diplomatic Academy for a very topical subject tonight. We are talking about something which doesn't hit the media limelight normally, but which is of utmost importance in a time of disruption. The question is simply, how can we, those countries who believe in multilateral cooperation, help each other? How can we cooperate? And what is the special position of Austria and Europe vis-à-vis the ASEAN countries? I thank the initiator of this evening, His Excellency, the Malaysian ambassador, because it was his initiative to have this meeting here, because Malaysia, as I guess all of you know, is the chair at the moment of ASEAN. Let me say, in the words of welcome, only a few things really. This is really disruption. And this disruption means that we need really to find ways out of the situation. We need to cooperate, and it's trade issues are only part of it, but also trade issues tell us that it is not easy to live in a time where the big ones try to eat the rest. I'm not mentioning the United States by name, but I should do it possibly, mention them, and what they're doing at the moment in the trade arena. For us, for ASEAN and Europe, this is important because we are big trade partners on both sides. Number 3, as far as trade is concerned, which is essentially a good sign because it means that a group of countries can work with other group of countries which have a similar approach to how we should work in the global order. So let's work against the disruption. And my second point is really I favor very much this cooperation because it helps us also in rebuilding, I would almost say, democracy in a way which is acceptable to more countries than we used to say. We used to know what Western liberal democracy means without really talking to the others on the same length of ideas. So it needs an open discussion about the possibilities of democracy for all our societies, and I favor very much that the European Union and ASEAN countries have dialogues for a long time, dialogues on these specific issues, and maybe there is more potential than we see now. My last point really is it has to do with the multilateral promise. I say multilateral promise because I don't want to call it multilateral decline or anything. There's a multilateral promise that we can see now, even in these disruptive times, that there is a chance for countries like ours, countries in our 2 areas to work together and to be successful also together. I would say both the European Union and ASEAN is attractive for neighboring countries, which is a good sign. The question is then, what does it mean if we enlarge an organization? We have these issues in the European Union. You have these issues also on the ASEAN side. But possibly this is also an arena where we can learn from each other because I think there is no alternative to this form of globalization, which means a fair multilateral cooperation. These are my not so neutral remarks at the beginning of this event, and I wish you a very good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Emil Brix, for your welcoming remarks. His Excellency, Ambassador Ikram Mohammad Ibrahim, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Malaysia, Madam Bita Rasoulian, Head, Asia Pacific Division, Austrian Federal Ministry for European and International Affairs, Dr. Alfred Gerstl, Adjunct Professor and Sessional Lecturer, East Asian Economy and Society, University of Vienna, distinguished guests, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me to warmly welcome all of you today. Thank you for joining us for this panel discussion entitled Malaysia, Austria, and ASEAN-EU Nexus in Advancing Effective Multilateralism, jointly organized by the Embassy of Malaysia in Vienna in collaboration with the Diplomatic Academy, Vienna. This session could not be more timely, as the international order faces mounting pressures from climate change and geopolitical uncertainty to fragmentation and instability. The need for renewed, effective multilateral cooperation has become ever more urgent. Today's session will explore how bilateral partnerships like Malaysia and Austria, as well as regional dynamics between ASEAN and the EU, can serve as a strategic connector in advancing multilateral goals. These relations are not just diplomatic constructs. They are living frameworks for engagement, cooperation, and problem solving. As two countries deeply invested in their respective regions, Malaysia and Austria, and by extension ASEAN and the EU, offer compelling models of regionalism that bridge geography, values, and governance traditions. Before we proceed further, allow me to provide you a little background on the ASEAN-EU relations. The EU became ASEAN's dialogue partner in 1977, with the partnership formally institutionalized through the ASEAN-EEC Cooperation Agreement in 1980. A key milestone was the adoption of the Nuremberg Declaration on an ASEAN-EU enhanced partnership in 2007. ASEAN and the EU enhanced its relations to a strategic partnership at the 23rd ASEAN-EU Ministerial Meeting on 1st December 2020. Through today's exchange, it is hoped that we can deepen our understanding of how such partnerships can be harnessed to shape a more resilient, inclusive, and rules-based multilateral system. Without further ado, I would now like to invite His Excellency, Ambassador Ikram Mohammad Ibrahim, to deliver his keynote address. Thank you.
And Nurhana herself has given a good summary of what we are going to talk about this evening. But nonetheless, let me once again express our appreciation to the Academy for agreeing to have this forum. It was about 3 months ago that I met with Dr. Brix to discuss about this initiative, and gladly 3 months later, this forum is taking place in conjunction with Malaysia's chairmanship of the ASEAN. 1 year rotational chairmanship according to alphabetical order. I have prepared for a presentation of about 10 minutes, I have prepared 11 slides. 3 slides about a bit about bilateral relations between Malaysia and Austria. The second segment, 5 slides on ASEAN, the background and a bit about our chairmanship. And then the third segment, 3 slides, the important ones. The important segment is on ASEAN, EU, Malaysia, Austria, Nexus. The difficult word here is Nexus. How one make this connection between Malaysia, Austria, and ASEAN, EU Nexus. This is what me and my fellow distinguished panel is going to attempt to do. Now, moving ahead, just to give you a flavor of Malaysia, Austria, we have been friends for the past, since 1962, for 63 years. 2022, we celebrated our 60th anniversary. And most important recent development was the inauguration of the Austria-Malaysia bilateral consultations last year. So we look forward to having subsequent consultations in the future. Trade, we are doing well. Over the past 10 years, both countries have enjoyed about 9 billion euro trade, both sides. Of course, always in Austria's favor. And investment also doing well for the past 45 years. Austrian has been one of the largest investors in Malaysia to the tune of 5 billion euro, especially in the past 3-4 years, I would say, with the investment from ATNS, Infineon Technologies, AMS Osram, and few other investors from Austria. Some of the important high-level visits that took place from both sides. And then we have this list of selected key Austrian investors in Malaysia. We thank them very much for having this confidence in our economy. And moving ahead, this is on the second segment about ASEAN. Just now, Dr. Brix and Hannah mentioned about establishment of ASEAN in 1967. We are almost 60 years, 6 decades. But if you look at the history of ASEAN, when it was established in 1967, there were only 5 countries. The 5 founding nations of ASEAN were Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Philippines. Brunei joined ASEAN later in 1984, something, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah? And the Indo-Chinese countries, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, came into the fold of ASEAN in the mid-90s. Reason being, in 1967, ASEAN was established at the height of the Cold War. So the context of establishment is important. History is important. Thus, after the end of the Cold War, fall of the Berlin Wall in the 1990s, in the mid-90s, our fellow neighboring countries from Indochina, as mentioned, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, joined ASEAN, making the number to 10. So this is important to my next point. These are the 3 key priorities of our ASEAN Chairmanship for 2025. Regional peace and security. We place a high premium on regional peace and security for our region. If you look at the Asian region as a whole, Southeast Asia is perhaps relatively the only relatively peaceful sub-region in Asia. Other sub-regions in Asia have their problems, crises. Need not mention what all those crises are. All these problems arise especially since the mid-1990s. So ASEAN takes great pride in of this reality, the fact that we are perhaps the most relatively peaceful sub-region in Asia for very good reason, which relates to trade and investment and sustainability. Dr. Brix just now talked about ASEAN-EU trade. Yes, very important partner, trading partner for ASEAN countries, the EU. But we are trying to increase intra-ASEAN trade because one of the main motivation during our chairmanship is to increase intra-ASEAN trade, which currently stand on average about 25% of trade, unlike as compared to the EU, which is intra-EU trade is about 60%. So we are going to slowly progress towards increasing the percentage of intra-ASEAN trade. You look about sustainability to development, growth, prosperity for the benefit of all segments of society. If you look at ASEAN's per capita individual countries, the highest is Singapore. It's about per capita about $98,000. And we have the lowest rung, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, is about $1,000 plus to $2,000 plus. So you see the huge gap. So this is one of the challenges that ASEAN, successive ASEAN chairman, and ASEAN as a whole will try to address. Now, last week, Monday and Tuesday, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia played host to these 3 important summits, 3 different summits actually. The ASEAN Summit, the ASEAN Gulf Cooperation Council Summit, and the first ever ASEAN GCC China Economic Summit. Reason being, the ASEAN GCC Summit has, ASEAN GCC, like the EU, ASEAN and EU, we have a good historic cultural relations as well as economy. So we'll continue to engage with the GCC. Now, with regards to the third summit, with China Economic Summit, the reason is simply because due to the evolving global geopolitical and geo-economic developments. You know what those developments are. So I think ASEAN, GCC, and China have come to the realization that through partnership and working together, we can greatly address together the challenges that we are facing. And mind you, these 3 entities, ASEAN, GCC, and China, constitute 2 billion population. So it's a huge market, huge potential. And we look forward to continue our cooperation with these entities. These are some of the selected. There are about a dozen or so outcome documents from the summit. I will not, of course, mention about them. You can check the ASEAN website for that and other challenges for ASEAN are straightforward. You have this. I'm sure our panel will touch on these issues later, or if not, I can expound on these challenges later during question and answer. But topmost is Myanmar. Yes, we have this 5-point consensus. Malaysia, during our chairmanship, we have been trying very hard to engage with all the relevant parties, ASEAN members, in trying to get some progress with regards to the situation in Myanmar. South China Sea is a long-standing issue. We have been looking at this issue for so many years. We continue to do so. But at the same time, putting a high premium on amicable solution, peaceful settlement of dispute, etc. Moving ahead, my last segment is ASEAN-EU. Just to give you some comparative view with regards to the where we stand in terms of geographical size, similar size. ASEAN is slightly bigger. Population, yeah, not so bad. Both sides. We have more countries. We members. We have 10. EU was established 10 years later than ASEAN, etc., etc. But interesting, if you look at the bottom two figures, the GDP. Of course, huge disparity between both blocks, both sides. $18 trillion and $3.8 trillion on the ASEAN side. So we have still a long way to go. But you look at the total trade, $552 billion and $224 billion. Not so bad. We are doing well. Almost half of your GDP, or total trade, sorry. So we are there because our ASEAN countries are very much, including Malaysia, for example, Vietnam, Indonesia, and other ASEAN countries are very much into manufacturing, services, and agriculture, commodities, export, etc. My second last slide, just to give you a flavor, to show to our audience, to share with our audience that the very fact that since 1977, for almost 4 decades, we have a very intimate and intensive relations with the EU, actually. It's just that I'm afraid that such developments, such relationship has not been really reflected through the media for whatever reasons. But nonetheless, from 1972, you see, it started already, and until now, we have regular mechanisms, meetings at the ministers' level, at the summit level from time to time, at the senior officials level, at the high officials level, on a host of issues which I'm going to touch about later. But if you look back earlier to history, since the 16th century, 15th century, Europe has been coming to our part of the world to colonize us. Started with the Portuguese, the Dutch, the British, the Spanish, the French, so we are not new to our relations with Europe in different circumstances, nonetheless. But having said that, things have changed now. We are looking ahead, like what Dr. Brix said just now. There are great potential on both sides to explore further cooperation, and we hope for better things to come, especially given the current evolving, unpredictable geopolitical situation. Now, my last slide. This is where I will endeavor to in about 1 minute, to share with you my thoughts on this topic that we are having today, the Nexus. Now, those are the on the left side. Left-hand side is the 7 key areas of cooperation between both blocs. Yeah, agreed by both blocs, has been going on for decades. So we'll continue to do so, to focus on those 7 key areas. Now, admittedly, if you talk about real nexus, there's no established formal mechanism between ASEAN EU at any of our multilateral capitals, New York, Vienna, Geneva. We don't have such formal mechanism of consultations. But we do, nonetheless, informally consult with one another, with our EU colleagues, and vice versa, to talk about issues of common interest, as listed on the left-hand side of the slide. Now, if you look at the nexus with Austria and Malaysia, I listed there 4 examples. The panel will expound, will expand later. Austria has played a key role in the adoption of the TPNW. Few years back, started with the hosting several consultations and international conference on the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons, etc. And Malaysia, one of the hardcore countries against disarmament. So this is where we think opportunity for us in this area of disarmament and security for both sides. to try to strengthen this such nexus. Now, autonomous weapon system, last year, Austria, Vienna played host to an international conference, which I had the honor to attend. You know, so this will continue. Austria has important role to play, very much consistent with the position of many ASEAN countries. Talk about the issue of peace and security. The fourth is, of course, we mentioned a bit just now about global economy. Both sides agreed to support the rules-based trade system. We are against any trade barriers, and we are promoting sustainable development. We support Agenda 2030, SDG, we support the Paris Agreement, etc., etc. And lastly, climate change, of course, is important. Austria has been helping our country, Malaysia, as well as other ASEAN countries with regards to renewable energy, hydro, green technology, engine, automotive, etc., etc. Flood mitigation, we are learning a lot from Austria as to how you manage your. I've gone a bit, 3 minutes. We can continue discussion later during question and answer, as well as while we have a refreshments later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. You had given us a really comprehensive overview of Malaysia-Austria relations, ASEAN, EU, and the recent outcome of the 46th ASEAN Summit. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our next distinguished panelist, Madam Bita Rasoulian, Head of the Asia-Pacific Division at the Austrian Federal Ministry for European and International Affairs. Please, Madam.
And I shall proceed. Is it necessary now if I have the microphone there? I can take it off? Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, almost good evening. Thank you to all the organizers. Thank you first and foremost to the Malaysian Embassy, Excellency, as well as to the Diplomatic Academy for having us here today. It was great to see Dr. Brix shortly. It is really a pleasure and honor to be in a panel with you, Excellency, and with Professor Gerstl. Allow me to just start by underscoring what I believe is the importance of such dialogues, of such exchanges with like-minded partners at a time of rising geopolitical and geoeconomic uncertainty, disruptions, as Dr. Brix put it. And in the face of, as was mentioned, the face of these new and unprecedented challenges that we are experiencing to multilateralism and to the rules-based international order. And precisely in this new geopolitical context, it is imperative that we reach out to our like-minded partners, that we strengthen our ties, and that we strive to increase our strategic engagement. We must all have a common goal, and that common goal should be more stability, should be more security, and should be more predictability, because after all, I think that you all agree with me that in recent times, it has really been hard to come by to get predictability, so to say, in world affairs or generally in all aspects of life. And this even more so when we consider that the security and prosperity of Europe and the Asia-Pacific region are closely interlinked and intertwined. We saw that during the COVID pandemic. We see that, or we have been seeing this during Russia's war of aggression against the Ukraine. So we are not talking about isolated theaters. We are all, so to say, being affected when there is tension and conflict anywhere, I would say, around the globe. I spent 5 years in the Philippines as Austrian ambassador to the Philippines, and had the opportunity to, of course, have many interactions there with regional actors, of course, the Philippines being also a member of ASEAN. And I have become acutely aware during my time there of really the significance of the region, meaning, of course, of ASEAN as a regional bloc, and of the Indo-Pacific in the broader sense. The significance of the region in geoeconomic terms, in geopolitical and geostrategic terms, and of course as a like-minded partner on the multilateral arena. So please allow me to touch upon these three aspects and also highlight the excellent relations that Austria and the EU have with Malaysia, of course, as the current chair of ASEAN, and Malaysia as a key strategic actor in the region. So to start off from a geoeconomic standpoint, ASEAN and the Indo-Pacific serve truly as the arteries, as the heartbeat of global trade and supply chains. The Indo-Pacific, when we look at trade, is home to, accounts for approximately 60% of global maritime trade. It is home to 60% of the world's population. So it is, as we know, it is home to critical maritime routes, more than that, to strategic lifelines, be it in the Strait of Malacca, be it in the Sunda Strait, the Taiwan Strait. These are all vital for the free flow of goods, energy resources, digital infrastructure. And the region also powers the global industry, whether it's semiconductors, whether it's rare earths, whether it's key manufacturing hubs in the ASEAN, Malaysia, of course, being one of them. So any disruption here, any disruption in these maritime routes can send shockwaves across international markets. So ensuring the freedom of navigation, upholding international maritime law, the UNCLOS and the arbitration ruling of 2016 that we all respect, these are not just regional concerns. They're not just something that should be a concern of the ASEAN as a region, the Indo-Pacific, or the individual countries. These are absolutely global imperatives. And here I would like to come to the geopolitical and geostrategic importance of the region that, again, extends beyond economics. So the Indo-Pacific is becoming more and more a theater for great power rivalry, particularly between the United States and China. We see increasing alliances. We are seeing increasing armament. We're seeing increasing nuclear proliferation that is underestimating and undermining all our efforts towards disarmament and non-proliferation, of which, as was mentioned, Austria is a champion of, and Malaysia as a like-minded partner. So the contest in the region is, so to say, no longer merely about economic influence or technological supremacy. It's also about who sets the rules for the future security architecture. A future security architecture not only for the region, but for the whole world. And in this competition for influence, for power, the ASEAN plays a critical role in balancing the interests of the major players within the Indo-Pacific. With its policy of non-alignment, the policy of centrality, which is fully respected by the EU. And here I must say I'm fully aware when I talk about ASEAN that there are nuances. I think, Excellency, you will perhaps go into that a little bit later. The ASEAN is not a monolithic bloc. There are certain nuances in the foreign policy stance of its members. But nevertheless, with a policy of non-alignment and centrality, the ASEAN has positioned itself as a platform, as a key platform for dialogue and cooperation. It has a very strong convening power. It has various mechanisms, dialogue mechanisms, such as the East Asia Summit, such as the ASEAN Regional Forum and other ones. And it brings together the regional and global actors, big or small, to engage diplomatically in dialogue amid the increasing competition and tension globally and regionally. And obviously, there is not a shortage of, unfortunately, not a shortage of tensions in the region. You mentioned some. Of course, the maritime choke points are possible sources of tension and conflict, the rising tension between Taiwan and China, North Korea, violation of international norms, Myanmar, the South China Sea, overlapping territorial claims. So there are many hot spots and flashpoints in the region. And how the regional actors respond to these challenges, or rather also how the international community engages with them, will significantly shape the future regional architecture, the economic, political, and security architecture. Allow me now to move on to the EU and ASEAN relations. For EU and ASEAN, it is about navigating together all these complex geopolitical challenges that are coming our way in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. It is about jointly upholding the rules-based international global order. What we need is more transparency, what we need is more stability, and what we need is development and inclusivity for all, which is also in line with the priorities of the Malaysian chair now of the ASEAN. Now, as you mentioned, the EU and ASEAN relations have gained momentum over the past years. We're strategic partners. We're two powerful and successful regional blocs. We represent a significant part of the world population, international trade, and global economy. And what is more important, we're both committed to the rules-based international order, to a free and open Indo-Pacific, and a nuclear-free Indo-Pacific. And these commitments are also laid down in the EU Indo-Pacific strategy, which has many synergies with the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. And amid the shifting global dynamics and rising geopolitical fragmentation that we're experiencing, we need to work more closely together. We need to send together EU and ASEAN a strong signal of strategic alignment on the key global and regional challenges. That includes the Russian war of aggression against the Ukraine, that includes DPRK, the tensions in the Taiwan Strait, South China Sea, and other hotspots, also those in the Middle East. So again, the common goal should be regional global stability, more predictability, more resilience, and an effective rules-based multilateralism. I would like to say a few words on Malaysia. As a founding member of ASEAN, of course, and a key player in the entire Indo-Pacific region. For Austria, Malaysia is a like-minded partner and with a shared commitment to stability, to multilateralism, and a rules-based order. Now, the relations between Austria and Malaysia, you mentioned, Excellency, are excellent on all fronts, be it political, economic, cultural, and more. We will be celebrating 65 years of diplomatic relations in 2027. Economically, of course, Malaysia is a vital global trade and supply chain hub. It sits astride the Strait of Malacca. For Austria, it is the most important export market in the ASEAN region and one of our largest trade partners in the Indo-Pacific region. There's also substantial Austrian foreign direct investments, which you mentioned across different sectors. You mentioned AT&S, but of course and you had a list of the companies. So these are foreign direct investments that go into the billion euro investments. And there is a great interest on the Austrian side and on the Malaysian side to expand our cooperation further into areas of mutual benefit for both sides, in green tech, in infrastructure, in renewables, health, climate, and more. Now, also when it comes to multilateralism, Malaysia is a like-minded partner for us. You mentioned nuclear disarmament, of course. You mentioned non-proliferation. Thank you very much for supporting also Austria's endeavors. Austria, of course, championing disarmament and non-proliferation on a global scale. And however, beyond the bilateral, Austria's engagement with Malaysia is, of course, also supported and reinforced by the EU engagement with Malaysia. Following the PCA, the Partnership and Cooperation Agreement of 2022, we look forward to starting free trade negotiations, restarting, I might say, free trade negotiations with Malaysia at the end of June. And we believe that it is extremely important for both of us, especially in the light of the shifting policies towards more protectionist trade policies, such as through the new Trump administration. So yes, trade between both sides is very strong between EU and Malaysia. EU is the 4th largest trading partner of Malaysia. Malaysia is EU's 3rd largest partner within the ASEAN region. And again, there's also a substantial flow of foreign direct investments. So it is clear that Malaysia is a strategic partner for us. It's able to bridge the economic, cultural, and political divides in Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific. And frankly, it plays a role far larger than its size might suggest, although it's not a small country, but nevertheless. And I think that strengthening Malaysia's capacities and partnership is not just in ASEAN's interest, but it is in the EU and global interest. So I will just conclude now by saying that I think it is important that we bear in mind that what I said at the outset, that Europe and the Indo-Pacific are not single theaters, that all the crises in the world are interconnected, and that it is not just about ASEAN, about the Indo-Pacific, or about Europe. So we must step up our commitments, our cooperation jointly to navigate these challenges together. Europe is a credible partner for ASEAN and for the whole Indo-Pacific region. We are consistent, we're reliable, our help, our partnership comes with no strings attached. We want to diversify just like the ASEAN countries want to do that. We want to deepen the partnerships and, of course, strengthen the strategic autonomy. And when I speak about strategic autonomy, we also not only want to strengthen our own strategic autonomy, but also help our partners to improve their strategic autonomy by expanding cooperation in security and defense. Now, this includes, when I speak again, security in a broader term. Security is maritime security, but it's also cybersecurity. It's also hybrid threats. It's also misinformation. It's foreign interference and more. Just a few days ago, the EU and the Philippines concluded a defense and security dialogue. And of course, the EU offers a number of mechanisms, the ESIVA, Crimario, a number of mechanisms to strengthen defense and security partnerships and cooperation with countries in the region. So also in terms of trade, we need to do more trade in order to enhance prosperity, to foster development in the interest of both sides. We already are very strong in our trade relations together. Mentioned it before, EU is already ASEAN's 3rd largest trading partner and 3rd largest investor. But we need to do more. We need more free trade agreements, and as I mentioned, the FTA negotiations with Malaysia will start at the end of June. Beyond that, also, we need to expand our cooperation in the strategic areas and technologies where we have shared strategic interest: AI, space, digitalization, connectivity, climate change, green transition. And here's where the EU mechanisms, the EU programs, Global Gateway, Horizon Europe, all instruments that are supported that have substantial sums, billions of euros actually, dedicated for cooperation in the fields of innovation, connectivity, research, and more. And a clear example, the ASEAN power grid, that is an objective now of ASEAN. The EU would be happy to work together with ASEAN on green energy connectivity to support, for example, an ASEAN power grid. So all in all, I think that it is in our mutual interest to take our strategic partnership with Malaysia to the next level, namely to a comprehensive strategic partnership. And we, as the EU, hope to do that at the 50th anniversary of the EU-ASEAN relations in 2027. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Bita Rasoulian. It is interesting how you had highlighted on so many important issues, such as Austria's, the importance Austria gives to its multilateralism, Austria being a bridge builder on key important issues such as the NPT, on ensuring stability, and also on ASEAN and the Indo-Pacific. Thank you very much. So next, I would like to invite Dr. Alfred Gerstl to deliver his speech.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, really a big thank you to the organizers, of course, foremost the Malaysian Embassy for organizing this important and timely event. And also thanks for having me as the third speaker, because it makes my life easier, because I can really build on the very insightful talks of His Excellency and also Ms. Rasoulian. Thank you very much. Let me start also with a thank you to the European Union, because the EU funds two of my current research projects. One is about the European Union in the volatile Indo-Pacific region. So this is close to disruption, Ambassador Brix mentioned in the beginning. And the second one, even more relevant for today's talk, is the European Southeast Asian relations, the current state and future outlook, which will go until July next year. We have already heard that the European Southeast Asian relations are very close, and as part of my EU-SEER project, I hope to make a contribution to this, because together with students from the University of Vienna, we have started to publish a so-called tracker on European Southeast Asian relations, covering the relations of the European Union and the Central European countries, including Austria. So if you're interested in these relations, please visit the tracker, easy to find, or you can approach me afterwards. The ASEAN-EU relations are very close. Just to highlight the economic part, and sorry to correct you, the EU is already the second largest investor, so that's big. It's easy to remember, very easy to remember, but I know it sometimes also the Chamber of Commerce gets it wrong. China is always the main trade partner for the Southeast Asian nations, but it's not the biggest investor, which might be a surprise. It's the United States, it's the EU, and sometimes there's a change between them. Important to further deepen the European Southeast Asian relations is also to have a better understanding how is the EU perceived in Southeast Asia, and in general, it's very well respected. Because it's a normative power, it's an economic powerhouse, it contributes to the regional, the rules-based order, and this is both actually recognized by the population. We also conducted, as part of a research project, opinion polls in Southeast Asia, but also among the elites. So this is from the Institute of Southeast Asia Studies in Singapore. That's the current poll on the perceptions of the great powers. And I think it's clear here. The question is, whom are the partners with most strategic relevance to ASEAN? It's always China, United States, and on the third place, Japan, followed by the European Union. So apart from the two superpowers, I would always argue that Japan is the preferred third partner for the Southeast Asian nations, followed already by the European Union. Let's have a quick look at the map of the Indo-Pacific, which was already mentioned a couple of times. And if you just look at it, I think it's obvious from the beginning, Southeast Asia is the geographic heart of the Indo-Pacific region. Because obviously we have the South China Sea interlinking the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean. However, it's also the political institutional heart, because thanks to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, we have well-established institutions, was already mentioned, the ASEAN Regional Forum, the East Asia Summit. Then we have also the ASEAN and bilateral dialogue mechanism. So we have forums, we have cooperation mechanism in place which other nations can use and in fact use. Also for China, geographically, politically, Southeast Asia plays a key role, not least in its Belt and Road Initiative. We mentioned the South China Sea a couple of times, so we may have some questions in the Q&A sessions. I won't touch on it now in detail. All major powers or stakeholders in the Indo-Pacific regions have in the last 10 years published so-called Indo-Pacific strategies. The Western countries, they call it free and open Indo-Pacific strategies, and what they all have in common is that they emphasize the need to maintain, to strengthen the rules-based, multilateral, inclusive, cooperative order. Also, all these nations, including the European Union, put strong emphasis on ASEAN centrality. So also, as said, the European Union. Why? Well, His Excellency mentioned it. ASEAN was very successful in the 90s to actually expand its influence from Southeast Asia, first to Northeast Asia, China, Japan, South Korea, but also to Oceania, Australia, India. So it has also ASEANized the, let's say, Asia-Pacific region because its norms, its values are also reflected in all these mechanisms that actually transcend Southeast Asia. However, the big question we all have to ask is, how long is ASEAN centrality feasible in a time when the two superpowers compete for strategic, for economic influence in the region? Right now, ASEAN centrality, I would argue, is still useful both for Washington and Moscow, but you can ask for how long. ASEAN and the EU have both published also an Indo-Pacific strategy, and here to find more critical words, both ASEAN and the EU are latecomers if you compare them to Japan, to Australia, to India, to the United States. So both reacted to the strategies, but also the specific policy strategies of the great powers. For ASEAN, let me emphasize it, that ASEAN accepts the term Indo-Pacific was quite a surprise because it's a term China doesn't use, China doesn't like. China still speaks of the Asia-Pacific, by the way, Russia as well. So this is quite a strong statement, I would argue. ASEAN is an honest broker, and it's in its outlook, in its strategy, it further offers its mediator efforts, but also speaks of possible new cooperation agreements with other sub-regional or regional formats in the Indo-Pacific region. For the European Union, also strong emphasis on the rules-based order, ASEAN centrality, similar to ASEAN, freedom of navigation and trade, and again, South China Sea is here highlighted. Also mentioned was that the EU emphasizes the need to cooperate with other partners, and especially with like-minded nations. So we have to ask, what does like-minded actually need? Like-minded, of course, there are strong overlaps in regard to maintain rules-based order, international law. But another question is, of course, the EU is very strong on promoting human rights and democracy. And if you look at the map of the world, and please specifically look at the Indo-Pacific and Southeast Asia, the majority of the countries there are not democratic. They are semi-democratic or even authoritarian. So what does this imply for the future cooperation? Certainly a question for discussion. To give you an example, just thinking about Russia's illegal war against Ukraine, well, ASEAN has key principles such as respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, but if you look at the voting records of the Southeast Asian nations in the United Nations, you had Singapore, you had East Timor, who were the strong, actually, defenders of Ukraine, whereas others kept neutral, or some even defended Russia's invasion. We live in a very complex, challenging world, not least to Donald Trump. So what's the key feature? It's the increasing geostrategic, geoeconomic rivalry between United States and China. And what does this imply for smaller, for middle powers, such as ASEAN and the European Union? ASEAN, also member states such as Malaysia, Philippines, I would argue, Vietnam, Indonesia, are actually examples for a successful hedging strategy. What does hedging mean? Hedging means it's kind of insurance strategy. And with this strategy, the governments want to avoid to be forced to align either with the United States or China. For this, they cooperate with both superpowers, with the US economically and security and defense, China mainly economically, but in addition, they have omnidirectional relations with all interested partners. So therefore, just based on this hedging strategy, in fact, it's much more easier for the European Union to be a strong partner to offer economic cooperation, security and defense. Philippines are a very good example, as you mentioned, but also research, civil society cooperation, infrastructure, connectivity. So I would argue there are many, many areas of mutual concerns, many challenges both groups face, but also on the other side, there are also ways for them to cooperate very pragmatically. Also, however, we have to be aware of the limitations. So both ASEAN and EU are not military alliances. So when it comes to defending the rules-based order, they cannot send their navy, they cannot send their troops. So they need to rely on diplomacy, on negotiations, on convincing other countries, finding partners to build strong alliances. Also, even in regard to economic, to trade cooperation, there are some limitations. And here I would actually put the blame on the European Union, because the trade negotiations between ASEAN and the EU are stalled. Since January, at least, there is a revival of the talks between the EU and Malaysia, but it's EU and one country. It's not on the regional level, which I think would be very, very important. So let me conclude. So EU, ASEAN, I wouldn't say they are natural partners, but they are strong. They are strong regional blocs, and I think they have overlapping interests. They face very similar challenges, and they both have to define their role in a world which is right now defined by geopolitics, geoeconomics, so really by the interests of the great powers. So it's more challenging for smaller nations to find their role and defend the rules-based international order. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A session.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alfred Gerstl. Before we proceed further, as you had mentioned earlier, you highlighted a few times on the ASEAN and EU and the Indo-Pacific. So from your perspective, how can the ASEAN-EU nexus function as a stabilizing force in the Indo-Pacific, particularly amidst these rising geopolitical tensions in the region? Thank you.
Yeah, that's really the important questions, and you may ask the diplomats. I think the way forward is really to demonstrate that cooperation has tangible benefits, not only for the governments, but also for the citizens, so that it's not only talking, but there are really specific outputs. And also, I think the challenge in particular for ASEAN, for the EU, is really in case of a breach of international law. Just think of the South China Sea. We have since 2016, we have an award of the Permanent Court of Arbitration, which was 97% in favor of the Philippines. However, China completely ignores this international verdict. So I think there is really room for both institutions to follow up, to criticize China more, also the United States if it's in breach of international law, and show support to the claimant nations in the South China Sea, for instance.
Thank you. Yes. If you don't mind, Ambassador Ikram. So Malaysia recently hosted a successful ASEAN summit that reaffirmed our regional unity and cooperation amidst growing geopolitical uncertainty. How might the outcomes of this summit, such as our renewed the ASEAN region's commitments to ASEAN centrality, help shape a more effective and inclusive model of multilateralism for both ASEAN and its external partners like the EU?
A couple of important points. Number one, Bita just now mentioned about monolithicism of ASEAN. If you look at the ASEAN comprising of 10 states, you have different political systems, different legal systems, different religions. There are those like Malaysia, predominantly Muslim nation. You have Philippines, Catholic, Christian. You have Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Buddhism, various sects, different sects of Buddhism. Indonesia, another majority Muslim country. If you compare to other sub-regions in the world, you cannot find any sub-regions like ASEAN. So it is a miracle over almost 60 years that ASEAN has survived and functioned as it has been doing for so many years. Now, it is always a challenge for, if you look at there are individual countries among ASEAN, even for Malaysia, which, have certain biasness when it comes to any given issue. That's a given. And that's normal international relations. But as chair, as far as Malaysia is concerned, we are guided by the collective decision of the bloc. In our case here, the EU, as mentioned by our two panelists, very important strategic partner for ASEAN, and will remain to be so in years to come. Mindful that both blocs will be among the top 5 economy by 2050. So there are great potential for both of us. And mind you, since 1940 until the mid-1990s, in our region, it has been estimated. You cannot get the actual correct figure. 1940 until 1995, between 2 million and 4 million people in ASEAN and South Asia have died because of conflict, because of World War, because of the Indo-Chinese War, etc., etc. Vietnam War including. So there's a lot of people. So we know the value of peace. That's why in my presentation just now, we put a high premium on having peace and security, not only national level, but more importantly at the regional level. Bita and Dr. Gerstl mentioned about the freedom of navigation, maritime route disruption, etc. Yes, we know the value of peace and security. And we will do as much as we can, including our leadership chairmanship, and along with other ASEAN countries. And this is where I think important aspect that both ASEAN countries and EU countries can explore, how we can get not necessarily military cooperation, but more into defense, security, technology, cyber security including. So these are important. It's a long way ahead, long road ahead, but I think we should start. We have started already, but it's going to take time. And there's potential there as long as everybody understands that it is always rules-based, rules-based, rules-based. No two ways about it, and I hope everybody understands where we stand. When we talk about US, China, we always choose ASEAN. So that's our position. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. For Madam Rasoulian, you mentioned about the importance of ASEAN and the EU cooperation. But the ASEAN and the EU, they have very different approaches to regional integration and multilateral cooperation. In your view, how could their different for the EU and the ASEAN's different approach contribute to multilateralism in general?
I don't think it's necessarily about having different approaches. It's about dialogue, it's about creating mechanisms for cooperation, it's about aligning our stances, it's about finding ways to come closer together, to learn from each other. interaction, it is about dialogue, and when you talk about multilateralism, multilateralism is having countries come together, big or small, and have a legal framework that protects them, that gives them security, that gives them a basis for predictability, for transparent actions, for accountability. And I think this is something that is in the interest of both blocs, and I think that there is no contradiction in the approach that we take to multilateralism, to a rules-based international order. I think that we are all both striving in the end goal for the same thing.
Thank you. That really gives a very good overall overview of what ASEAN and EU is going for. At the end of the day, it is what both blocs are just trying to achieve: regional peace, stability, and cooperation, and to enhance economy, each region's economy. And for ASEAN, ASEAN is striving at the moment. ASEAN is also has a lot of dialogue relations with 10 dialogue partners. So the EU being one of them, and one of the most important dialogue partners for ASEAN. So with this, I would like to thank all our panelists today for their insights, and I would now like to open the floor for any questions or comments. Please feel free to raise your hand or to ask any other panelists any specific questions. Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me? First of all, thank you for wonderful insight. My name is Wallace. I'm a student from Diplomatic Academy of Vienna. I'm from Hong Kong, so I really appreciate and also really agree what you have said about especially focus on Asians. But my questions would focus on the challenge of the Asians, because as several Asian member states have faced several challenges like political instabilities, economic mismanagement, or even corruptions. And the Asians way, which prioritize the consensus building and the non-interference in the internal affairs of members. So in light of these challenges, how can Asians enhance cooperation and unity to strengthen its role as a prominent and influential regional power in Asia? Thank you.
May I volunteer to respond to that beautiful question? There is this thing with Asia and Southeast Asian culture in general. We like to do things behind closed doors. When you do not read anything in the news, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. For example, I'll give you an example. In the 80s, Malaysia was part of the mediating between Jakarta and Aceh, Sumatra peace process. It didn't work out. Took over by Norway. It worked, and alhamdulillah. We were part of the in southern Philippines when Ambassador Rasoulian was there. A peace agreement was reached. Malaysia was the mediator between the Moro and the Philippines government. We are still part of the mediation in southern Thailand, with the unrest in southern Thailand. But you don't read that in the news. So we like to do things behind closed doors. We don't like this megaphone diplomacy, always go to the social media, TikTok, whatever, and tell the whole world what we are doing, what we have achieved. That's the Asian way. And we have also the ASEAN way, which is based on two things. One is consultations, and second is consensus. Yeah? We are very proud of that, two basic fundamental principles of ASEAN. That's how we do things. Then there are certain things that we cannot agree, fine, granted. So we move on to other issues that we agree. So it's impossible. When you get married, between husband and wife, there are always things that you cannot not agree with your partner. That's normal. That's how human beings are. Now, in terms of corruption, political instability, that's, I think, something that beyond corruption, yes. You have this, even under the UN system, you have these various conventions, agreements, etc. We'll continue to work with ASEAN countries as well as international community to address all these challenges of corruption. Yeah? It is not easy. human factor is involved, transnational crime, etc., etc., money laundering, safe havens for corrupt individuals to keep their money outside the country. Political stability, yes, there are ups and downs. Even now in ASEAN, as mentioned, political system, including 1 or 2 countries, have this kind of military rule. So this is something that we have to learn to live with, because we cannot choose our neighbors. We have to try to learn and manage as best as we can, as best as we could, so that we can continue to process. Because we don't have any other option other than to get along with all 10, and inshallah later in October summit in Kuala Lumpur, we will admit Timor-Leste as our 11th member of ASEAN. Yes, thank you for the question, and we can continue to talk about it later quietly outside.
Open the floor, yes.
Thank you. I want to mention that Austria and Malaysia have something in common. These are 2 small countries. Austria is within the heart of Europe and European Union. Malaysia is the heart of ASEAN. So, and in fact, our policy is very similar to the policy of Malaysia, what the college meant with the word of hedging. In fact, Austria is using hedging till 1945 because of the historical situation. But what I want to mention is that it's very good that European Union and ASEAN try to cooperate each other, but there is a significant difference between these 2 blocks. European Union follows the politics of integration on political and economic level. Austria delegates sovereignty to European Union institutions. That's the fact. Austrian economy is very strong incorporated in EU economy. 80% of our trade is going to EU countries. So, in fact, we are interested in more integration on political and economic level. That's the point. Would Malaysia follow such a way within ASEAN? Or the question is, what do you think, what can Malaysia learn of Austria and you?
Okay, another question for me. Thank you, Dr. Bita. It's not about hedging, but just to share with you, our Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has been our PM for the past 2 years. In terms of his engagement with Europe, is very quite remarkable for us, because in the past 2 years he has visited Europe 4 times. Twice to Russia, including the one last month. He has been to, of course, Germany and UK within these 2 years, and he's scheduled to visit another 2 European countries later in the year. Has been actively visiting East Asia and other ASEAN countries, of course West Asia, etc. Because we know that it is time for us to make friends, not only because of these recent geopolitical, geoeconomic developments, but beyond that, because we are a trading nation. So, as mentioned, examples by our panelists just now, we are doing well, and other ASEAN countries are doing well. We like to trade with everybody. So we need a certain and predictable and stable global order. So that's why how we can do that? Well, we compare with Austria. Well, in terms of geographical size, Austria is 1/3 the size of Malaysia. Population-wise, Austria is about 1/3 the size of Malaysian population. You have about 9-10 million. We have about 30 plus million people. Population density also similar, about 100 plus person individual per square kilometer. GDP, Malaysia is about 400 billion, Austria is about 700, 800 billion, almost double. Per capita here is about 54 $1,000. Malaysia is about $14,000. So there's so many things that we can learn from another. Obviously, being a developing country, yes, we are going into aggressively into all this new technology, innovation, green technology, semiconductor, data centers. That's why ATNS, MS Austria, Influent Technologies are aggressively having their investments in Malaysia. Google, and various other international, NVIDIA, they have their data centers, data hubs in Malaysia. So we are going there slowly. But the demands is, our focus is to create employment, to grow, etc., etc. So we are focusing on that angle. Therefore, Austria plays a very important role insofar as technology innovation is concerned. Our delegations, private companies, as you're aware, have been coming to Austria for so many years to venture, to explore opportunities for that, including other countries, Germany, Netherlands, etc. So we are there. We are proud among ASEAN countries. We are among perhaps the best country with the best high-skilled, semi-skilled workers. TVET is another important aspect in our education. So yeah, but admittedly we are there, but we still have a long way to go. But inshallah, with good friends like Austria and other EU countries, we will reach there sometime. Thank you.
Ambassador, that was a very good explanation. Is there any other questions?
Or comments?
Or comments? Yes, please.
To other panels as well.
Thank you so much. I would like to first of all thank you for first-hand, very insightful insights on the current situation regarding Malaysia, EU and Austria relations. My name is Victoria Ivanova, and I'm actually probably could be a little bit biased because Alfred Gerstl is actually my supervisor, ex-supervisor. I graduated his faculty at University of Vienna, and my thesis was actually on Belt and Road perceptions by Malaysia and Germany until 2022. And given the fact that ASEAN primarily sponsored, most investments come from US, then EU, and then China. So we see kind of this Western influence for this forum. So it's primarily important for West to keep this forum for open negotiations and open cooperation, I believe. It's like we can make these correlations here. And given the fact of Ms. Rasoulian advocating for EU rules-based order and this kind of cooperation, and given the amazing presentation by Ambassador Ibrahim, I noticed that one of the prime cooperation between Malaysia and Austria is connectivity. And so my question or remark, don't you think that it's kind of nearly impossible to exclude China on this matter? Because maybe it sounds a little controversial, but at the same time, China is the very big contributor to connectivity, maritime roads, railway roads, and so on. So yeah, the question probably was to Ms. Rasoulian and Ibrahim. Do you think it's like important to still consider China's impact on connectivity and Malaysian and general ASEAN economy? Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. I think generally as regards China, it is by no means the goal to exclude China in any way or in anything. China is a very important partner, not only for Austria, also for the individual ASEAN countries, also for many other Western countries or globally. We will continue to work closely with China. The cooperation with China is not in the approach that Austria has, that the EU has, is not about decoupling from China, so it's not about excluding it, but it's about de-risking. And we're following a three-pronged approach to China, which is based on the EU approach, which is one of seeing China as a partner, as a rival, as a competitor, with in fact the elements of rivalry, competition being on the rise. But China will remain a very strong partner for all of us, also for Malaysia, in the infrastructure sector, in the investment sector. And I think the role, when we say we are also trying to foster connectivity, we're trying to foster digitalization, we're trying to, so to say, venture also into other sectors where until now, perhaps the cooperation has not been as that strong, is simply also to foster innovation, to foster development and prosperity of both regions. Because without innovation, without going into, so to say, the high tech and also into the other sectors of cooperation, we cannot reach the level, so to say, of prosperity and with that stability and growth that both regions need. So in my opinion, it's, you know, some say that the Global Gateway or the some of the other programs that the EU has are, so to say, I don't know, perhaps a parallel program to the Belt and Road Initiative. They may be seen as such, but it's not a competition with China in that sense. Exactly. It's the main focus is also having reaching out also to other partners. Nobody's asking these partners to cut off with China. Austria is not cutting off with China. China is a very, very important partner to tackle global challenges. Many of the global challenges, from climate change, you know, to so many on the multilateral level and global scale.
Yeah, thank you. Number one is we are not only part of Malaysia is not only a member of BRI, we are partner country of Brix. Our Prime Minister is slated to attend the next Brix summit in South Africa. I stand corrected. So it's not choosing side, it's just to explore and have access to new markets so that we can do trade. Second point is in terms of connectivity, yes, we are not... we always go for value added, what states, countries, companies can bring to what we need. It is not always China all the time. For example, in the case of Malaysia connectivity, we have example, Siemens Austria provides the railway train from our airport to KL's high-speed rail, express rail link, since 30 years ago. So they still operate this railway track. Siemens Austria, very excellent until now. Azizi used to happen, my officer, my colleague used to work with the company that operates this service. In terms of telecommunication, satellite technology, for connectivity, yes, Europe is important market source of those connectivity sources for Malaysia. We will continue to do so. Satellite technology is very important, but China is fast catching up. In terms of telco, 5G, talk about 5G, etc. Infrastructure, yes, huge potential for Southeast Asia, for investors to consider coming to. But there is always this issue with the cost. At the end of the day, states, governments will, bottom line is how much it would cost. Our treasury people will ask, what's the budget? But without really looking at the value-added proposition that a company from Austria or company from China is offering. And I think my final point is the fact that you must understand it is not always a cowboy Hollywood movie. You have protagonists and antagonists. When we have relations with other countries, it's not a question of choosing sides. It is, we do things, we decide on what would serve, what would be in our best interest. I think Dr. Gerstl just now mentioned that EU is the second largest foreign investor in ASEAN. Number one is, of course, United States. Number three is China. The biggest trading partner, of course, number one for ASEAN is China, and then followed closely by US and and the EU. So the value in our relations is there, is evident. And I think this thinking, this mindset that you always have to have protagonists, antagonists, it's not for us. We don't really live, we don't buy that kind of narrative. Because you can say that for us, the market is huge, and it is up to everyone how they play and try to capture whatever is available in the market. The cake is big enough for everybody. You have to be clever to choose which cake you want to eat. That's it. You cannot be eating the whole cake, obviously, unless you wish to do so.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes?
Yeah, as a former ambassador to Malaysia, I think I should ask a couple of questions. After 20 years, things change. My first question would be, how far do the refugees from Myanmar affect not only Malaysia and Thailand, and how far is the impact of Indonesian migrant workers? When you see the demography, 250 million, Malaysia has 10% of it. So you have a giant on your borders. And I would be interested if you could enlighten us a little bit on what the situation is, and if this topic is discussed within the ASEAN family, of course. Myanmar also at my time was already, a very difficult partner. To my knowledge, there are two ASEAN members with juntas running it. Also Thailand, I think, has a serious problem in this regard. Could you say if this is affecting, of course, not only Malaysia and Thailand, but the whole family? And one other question, we are talking in Europe a lot about deficits, budgetary deficits. So when you have that, of course, the maneuvering space for investment gets a little bit diminished, or you have to make your choices and or work on this. Austria, this is a topic, and following this, also the former question of migration. In Europe, we witness, not only in Austria, in practically all the countries, a move towards rightist parties, some of them very extreme. Do you have a similar problem anywhere in the ASEAN family? Thank you.
General, we look from the perspective of human trafficking person, illegal migration, irregular migration, including the Rohingya issue, has been a serious concern and problem to our government for decades. On and off, we've been discussing with authorities, not only Myanmar, our neighboring countries, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, etc., with regards to this kind of issue. It's not easy. In the case of Rohingya, as you were in Kuala Lumpur, you know very well the situation. They don't have documents, and Myanmar does not recognize that they are their citizens. So what do you do? So we refer these people, what we call as person of, because Malaysia is not a party to the UN Refugee Convention 1951. But nonetheless, we do provide provisions within the convention, including by way of facilitating their processing through the United Nations Refugee Office in Kuala Lumpur. They will issue with UNHCR card, High Commissioner for Refugees, and they can stay within Malaysia. They cannot work, but they can have access to health, etc., education, etc. With the view that UNHCR will facilitate their transfer to a third country. It's not an easy process. Not many countries, parties to the Refugee Convention, are prepared to accept. When I was at Ministry about 10 years back, I was handling this issue. from about 300 Rohingya refugees that US was prepared to accept. Only 100 agreed to be transferred, to be relocated to the United States. Only 1/3. The other 2/3 prefer to remain in Malaysia, and we cannot force them to leave, to accept the offer. Because that's against the principles under the convention. In terms of illegal migration from migrant workers, there's a recurring issue. We'll catch them, we put them in detention center, and we'll send them back. There are mechanisms. That's why you notice that we always also promote intra-ASEAN investment. So Malaysian companies will invest in Indonesia, Vietnam, for example, to create employment opportunities. In terms of budget, stress on our budget, not that much, because we, unlike other countries, we do not provide social assistance, etc., to such categories of people. Has so far never become a domestic political issue. From time to time, there are expressions of concern that certain groups of migrant workers or people they are dominating certain settlement areas, etc., creating social problems, etc. But we know that the thing is that the pull factor, the domination pull factor is so strong that they are prepared to take risks. Some would just simply cross the Malacca Strait, the Straits of Malacca, in shanty boats, dilapidated boats, etc., risking their life just to try to attempt to get a better life in Peninsular Malaysia. Likewise, the Rohingya, they have this route through the Thai border in northern Peninsular Malaysia, Kelantan and Kedah, which they can easily cross into. But they know the risks, but still they were prepared to take such risks. So we hope that the situation, for example, in Myanmar will continue. We, as chair for ASEAN 2025, will continue to engage with the entities concerned, parties concerned, all stakeholders, including our ASEAN members, as to see how best we can try to find an amicable solution. This is the 2.0. This has happened. There's precedent before, so we more or less are familiar with the circumstances and the constraints that ASEAN as a group has. But this is something that we hope that our friends in Myanmar will understand where we stand, and we would like to see ASEAN as a bloc return to a peaceful and stable region. I think I've covered. Thank
you. Thank you very much, Ambassador. That was a very comprehensive explanation on the very delicate issue. Okay, so we have reached our time. So I would like to bring this engaging discussion to a close. But before I do so, I'd like to highlight on two key takeaways. Firstly, multilateralism is shaped and formed by shared purpose. It is not just desirable at this point, it is critical. And secondly, Malaysia and Austria, alongside ASEAN and the EU, possess complementary strength that enable them to bridge regions, values, and strategic approaches. So together, they exemplify how partnerships built on mutual respect can foster and contribute in building international cooperation. On behalf of the Embassy of Malaysia in Vienna, I would like to thank our distinguished panelists for their invaluable contributions to our discussion today, and to the audience, thank you very much for your engagement, comments, views, and questions. And of course, we'd like to also thank the Diplomatic Academy Wien for partnering with us in this timely initiative. So let us continue working together for a more just, peaceful, and cooperative global future. Thank you, and please do join us for some light refreshments in the next room as we continue discussions on this topic on issues in a more informal setting. Thank you very much.